You are listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, presented by Richard A. Boxshall, in which I chronicle my life and attempts to become a professional writer by, doing some writing, daily, hopefully. Hello, it is Sunday the 25th of August 2024. You are listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, and I haven't got a huge amount to say today. I don't want to do another emergency podcast because I feel like I've overused them. But I've had a very long day at work. Amusingly longer than it needed to be, actually. Well, amusing is probably not the word. So I was due to operate a flight to Germany this morning. And then when I finished that, we were due to stay on the same airplane and fly to Glasgow. That's how it was scheduled. And then something changed, which meant for whatever reason the flights weren't going to be on the same aeroplane. And because of the turnaround between the two flights, it meant it had to be a different crew. We couldn't do both because by the time we'd finished with one and then made our way to the next aircraft, it would have been late. So they took us off the Germany flights, only they forgot to tell me. So I got up at 2 o'clock this morning. I got to Heathrow for 4:30 and then discovered I wasn't needed until 11:05. It's funny. It's not funny, but it is funny. I mean, it wasn't deliberate, but so I got there a lot earlier than I needed to, and I really was tired again this morning. I was thinking, not of calling in sick or anything like that, but I was thinking, if only I didn't have this flight today this early. So it's good in a way, but then there are facilities for resting at work, but I didn't manage to sleep. I mean, I did rest a bit, so I was not too tired before the 11 o'clock that I had to get onto for the Glasgow flight. But yeah, so shattered now. Been awake since a rather early time. Tomorrow is the last day of this group of 4 working days, and we fly back from Glasgow. And then, unless something changes, we go to Ibiza and back on the end of it. But one thing I have had the chance to do since yesterday. So if you were listening to yesterday's podcast, you will have heard me specifically saying, I reckon there's not as much British music in the charts as there used to be. And I picked a random date using Alexa. So I got Alexa to choose a random year in the 1980s, and it chose 1981. And I got it to choose a random week out of 52, and it chose 14. So the 14th chart of 1981 was actually released on the 5th of April 1981, and it really did make interesting reading. I'm going to see if I can actually get it up on my iPad. Yes, I can. So for a start, what I wanted to do was compare the top 100 with what is happening at the moment, but I couldn't because they only seemed to compile a top 75 then. But it's really weird that it chose this week, because the song that's at number 1 on that week was This Old House by Shakin' Stevens, which was one. It's not the first single. I think it was the 3rd single I ever bought, but I definitely remember it. What else is in the charts that week? Making Your Mind Up by Bucks Fizz. At that point, it hadn't got to number 1, though I'm sure it does. Kids in America by Kim Wilde. A Toya EP. It doesn't name any of the songs. Can You Feel It by the Jacksons. What Becomes of the Broken Hearted. This isn't the whole chart, by the way. Jealous Guy by Roxy Music. Just a Feeling by Bad Manners. Planet Earth by Duran Duran. Was that their first single? I think it was their first single. Stuff by The Who. Kings of the Wild Frontier by Adam and the Ants. I Missed Again by Phil Collins. So a lot of really cool, good stuff. And you'll also notice most of those, I think nearly all the ones I just mentioned, were British acts. So in the chart that came out on the 23rd, so where are we? The day before yesterday. So a recent chart, or the most recent chart, in the top 10, only 5 tracks were British. On this week in 1981, 7 out of the 10 tracks were British. Now, admittedly, the previous week, the British chart was like that as well. So 7 out of 10, not bad. But if you remember, it then normally tails off. So this week, there were only another, I think we said 3 songs. So there were only 8 out of the top 20 were British artists. Whereas on this week in 1981, that one said 2015. This week in 1981 that I'm talking about, 14 of the top 20 tracks were British. So now 8, then 14. That's easy to work out again. That's 70% again. Going back to the top 40, the most recent was 12. 12 out of 40, which I'm pretty sure I worked out as 30%. I'm just going to do the maths again. Yeah, exactly 30% of the top 40 was British tracks. In 1981, it was 78%. Basically, 31 out of the 40 tracks, 40 songs were by British artists. And then it's a little bit difficult to compare the top hundreds because this chart then only went up to 75. But then it was still 74% of the chart. So I think that was 50, I think we worked out something like 56 out of 75 tracks were British artists. Whereas the top 100, it was 35% or 34% this week. So there is literally less than half as much British music in the charts. In fact, yeah, in the top 40 now as there was in this random week that I picked in 1981. So that's really interesting and a little bit sad, isn't it? But it was worth doing the comparison. I might pick another one in the future just because obviously you can't empirically say, well, that's conclusive, having compared 1 week then with 1 week now. So I may in the future, maybe for some emergency podcasts, in the future, although this isn't one, this is actually being recorded today, I might do that. But yeah, so that's a real difference. So in 1981, in the random week I picked in 1981, 31 of the top 40 tracks were by British artists. This week, in the real top 40, it's 12 out of 40. There's room for American acts. So the kind of American acts that were in the charts in 1981 was Stevie Wonder, Lynx, the Jacksons, Ennio Morricone, Kool and the Gang, Shalimar, Diana Ross, Barry Manilow, Joe Dolce. He did a song called Shut Up Your Face, remember that? REO Speedwagon, the Gap Band, Talking Heads, Quincy Jones. So lots of people I've definitely heard of and some great stuff. But actually, there was a lot more British stuff, a lot more. I mean, there was a lot of punk. So I was Googling all the bands to work out where their origins were. And there's a lot of indie punk bands and stuff in the charts that week. It's very interesting. So the moral of the story is we need to stream British more. Not saying we shouldn't listen to tracks made outside the British Isles. We absolutely should. But yeah, 12 out of 40 tracks in the top 40 by British artists compared to 31 in 1981. I'll shut up. Thank you for listening. Tomorrow I'll be doing a very, very long day at work, so I suspect I won't be doing much writing, and so I'll have to think of something else to talk about. But then the 2 days after that, I'm not working and really want to get a big chunk of chapter 35 done. I haven't killed Danny yet, and I bloody well need to. Take care, thank you, bye-bye. You have been listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, presented by Richard A. Boxall. Thank you for tuning in to my random ramblings, and if you'd like to know more about me or my projects, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/Richard Wright, capital R, capital W. Thank you for listening.